Good afternoon. For those of you who are just coming online, we had a slight technical hitch to get started, but we'll give it a couple of minutes as people appear in the webinar list. The attendees are coming online as I speak. My apologies for the delay in getting us started today, but we will use the rest of our time wisely.
I think we should go ahead and start.
Yeah, let's get started. Thanks very much, everybody, for joining us today. It's been a couple of weeks since we did our Design Thinker overview, Design Thinking for Scholars, and what we wanted to do with today was use our time together as a kind of to seed the ground in preparation for our NLS conference in Boston in a couple of weeks now. And we're excited by the opportunity to focus on what we think is a really rich area in terms of leadership and in terms of scholarship around leadership and practice around leadership, and that's leadership at the bottom of the pyramid. The original design challenge was framed as leadership in the informal economy, hence the title for today, but the more general purpose term that we'll keep coming back to is this concept of leadership at the bottom of the pyramid, and we'll talk more in detail about that. But what we're hoping to do is seed the ground in terms of what's the design challenge that we're hoping to address in our time together when we're bringing a broad range of scholars together with a range of practitioners to see if we can identify some opportunities that will yield fruit for both groups. So let's get started. Our objectives for today are not numerous, but they are pretty rich. So we'll introduce the design challenge. We'll talk about what is the bottom of the pyramid and how the bottom of the pyramid came into being as a concept and as part of our focus today, and the two are quite different. We'll explore a little bit about what emergent leadership is in the context of the bottom of the pyramid, and I'm hoping to generate some chat around why they are important, and then look at what our focus is for Boston. What are we trying to achieve by using this design challenge? Hopefully, the design challenge itself will make that pretty self-evident. The objectives I think we can handle quite easily in our time together. I'm much more interested though in our first question that I'll put to you all, which is, what are you hoping to get out of the NLS conference in Boston? If you're coming to the conference, what are you hoping to receive as a result of your participation? And we've got a few polls that we're going to put out to the participants. So let's start with this first poll. I'm sending you the poll now. You should see that in your chat pane. A poll should have appeared. And what I would ask you to do is read through the responses that are available. So what are you hoping to get out of the NLS conference in Boston? Learning more about leadership, new research opportunities, networking with peers, connecting with practitioners, or other. And you'll notice that we've left other. You're not able to add other as a. You're not able to explain yourself in other. That's where I would recommend that you actually address other in the chat area. So it looks like we've got some polls in. Learning more about leadership at the bottom of the pyramid, new research opportunities, and networking with peers. So new research opportunities, it seems to be the highest vote getter. We have a very small sample set, of course. It may not be indicative of the whole group. They will be my caveats. But it's interesting that those are the areas of focus. In terms of the research opportunities and learning more about leadership at the bottom of the pyramid, I'm absolutely sure that we'll be able to meet those needs over the course of the evening and the following day at the session. So thanks for that. Thank you for your participation in that poll. You should now see the results of the poll that's being closed, and I will carry on. So based on that, one of the things that we know we need to address from the perspective of the target for using design thinking is to have a design challenge. For those of you who were on the Design Thinking for Scholars call, this is the heart of where design thinking begins. It's being clear about what the particular area of challenge is. It often highlights initial resource availability and initial time frame. But the key for all design thinking work is the use of this three-word phrase, how might we? The idea being that it's investigative, it's exploratory, it's full of possibilities, and it's collaborative. That's what drives the work of design thinking in general. So this is going to be potentially a unique experience for many participants, not having used design thinking in practice before. Some I know have heard of design thinking and have experienced design thinking, but for our purposes we are going to make sure that we've got enough support on the ground to enable everybody, practitioners and scholars alike, to engage in this particular challenge. So here's the challenge. It is, how might we use the available academic and practitioner resources to arrive at a deeper understanding of emergent leadership at the bottom of the economic pyramid and ways to effectively foster and sustain it. So what we're trying to do is cast a reasonably wide net in terms of what would be potential research outcomes. Our scope of exploration is, of course, a very targeted area in terms of where we would expect to see leadership, or where we're looking to foster leadership, I should say. And that is in the context of the bottom of the economic pyramid, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. In terms of emergent leadership, the way in which we're seeing emergent leadership we'll also explore, and we have a few stories to share about emergent leadership in the context of both emergent leadership as it arises in developed world and also as it arises at the bottom of the pyramid, more to illustrate emergent leadership rather than necessarily to identify emergent leadership specifically at the bottom of the pyramid. So our hope is that when you see this design challenge, that this is something that might resonate for you, that this is a key part of the reason why you're joining us for an evening and a day of your life before the Academy annual meeting. Our hope is to make this
the broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Naga, I just want to check, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, it looked like there was a problem in having people join. So my apologies for those of you who are just able now to get into the webinar. It looks like there was a hang-up and people were now able to get into the session. So just backtracking a little, our hope is that this particular design challenge is broad enough that the people who choose to spend their time together over that time at the NLS conference will see value in their participation and will derive what they need to from the experience. And our hope is that they take away the concept of design thinking as a tool that they can then apply to their work after the fact. So by way of explanation, sorry about the preview on the previous image, but all will be revealed in a moment. So what is the bottom of the pyramid and what's its genesis? Well, in doing some research, this is a quote from Franklin Roosevelt. You'll note the date. It's early in the Great Depression. And what he was doing in this particular address was drawing attention to those people who were at the bottom of the economic pyramid, in the United States in particular. And my fascination with this was that that this was something that started in the developed world, and it's something that's kind of been co-opted and broadened, and I think that's actually it's a very interesting change in the nature of this particular term, because where it stands now is that it's focused not at a national level but at a global level, and where it might be applied nationally, it has that much more resonance in today's global economy and in the way nation states are choosing to work across international borders, and the way non-governmental agencies are working across national borders in order to strive to have an impact on and with people who are resident within the bottom of the pyramid. So you should be able to now see the image that I was referring to earlier, which is the image of a drawing from the period of Roosevelt's quote, which defines capitalism in its broadest terms, the pyramid of capitalism, and has the bottom of the pyramid as we work for all, we feed for all. So it's a very satirical look at what the bottom of the pyramid was seen to be. I think for our purposes, as we explore the bottom of the pyramid, I think we need to be pretty clear about what our broader definition is. And there are a number of rabbit holes we could go down as a group, and we're hoping that today's webinar is one way of restricting that disappearing down the rabbit hole, so to speak. That in that particular case, it's these particular definitions of terms. Oh, it looks like we have a problem with the, okay. Can if people can let me know in the Q&A about the presentation, is it coming up now? Urmi Ashar, I see. Oh yes, you can see it now. Okay, thank you, Nora, for letting me know. I appreciate that. And so, in terms of the bottom of the pyramid, there are very clear guidelines for defining the bottom of the pyramid. The first is the bullet point at the top of the screen. We're talking about the largest but poorest socioeconomic group in the world. It's 2.5 billion people, and it's a group of people who live on less than $2.50 US a day. And for our purposes, the next three bullet points are different aspects that could be reflected in the bottom of the pyramid, but we're primarily only concerned with this next one, which is the informal economy. So for the purposes of our gathering, we're going to focus on the bottom of the pyramid as it's defined here, and as it's reflected in the informal economy, which is the range of small-scale and unregistered economic activities, which include wage employment in unprotected jobs in some cases. The informal sector and informal employment are not going to be areas of primary focus for us. The informal sector, there is a large informal sector in much of the developed world. There is an informal sector even in the United States. It's approximately 8 to 9% of the US economy. In relation to a country like Thailand, where the informal sector makes up nearly 65% of the economy, I believe. And we're not going to focus on informal employment either. Our primary focus is on the poorest socioeconomic groups, and primarily outside of the developed world. I guess, are there, I see a question coming through. Yes. The question from Catherine was, would it be possible to get a copy of the slides? Absolutely, Catherine. I can make them readily available to everybody after the webinar. In fact, we'll email them to all the participants. Are there any other questions regarding the bottom of the pyramid at this stage? And Catherine, I'm sorry that you've had your hand raised. If you have another question, let me know, please. Okay. All right, it looks like there are no additional questions at this stage. We'll keep going. The next question is, so if that is the bottom of the pyramid and we have a shared understanding of it, well, I'm going to ask another poll, which is, from a percentage base, how much of your work is focused at the bottom of the pyramid? As scholars who are focused on management and on leadership, there is an assumption that some amount of time is being spent in this area, but I'd be very interested, and in fact the organizers of the NLS, the Network of Leadership Scholars event in Boston, are interested in preliminarily understanding what's going on. So here's the poll that we're going to ask. All right, you should see the poll in place. How much of your work is focused at the bottom of the pyramid, and you should be able to respond. Percentages are available in 20% increments from 0 to 100%. So if you could take a moment and address that, please. Okay, it looks like we've nearly got everybody voting there. Looks like maybe a couple more people need to vote. Okay, so we'll close that poll. And these are the results that we have for our first question. So how much of your work is focused at the bottom of the pyramid? So the vast majority, it's less than 20% of your attention, which raises a really interesting question, certainly for me and potentially for our organizers as well. What is it about this particular subject that is drawing your attention now? What is it that is appealing to you now? And if you could provide your responses in the chat field, that would be great. If you want to respond to everybody so we can all see that, that would be excellent. Thank you. So what's the appeal of the bottom of the pyramid at this stage? Okay. People should be able to see the screen now, and the chat functionality should have come back in. If you can so Urmi has shared that upon searching for answers to the cause of the current economic crisis, it's become evident to Urmi that not focusing on resolving issues at the bottom of the pyramid will prevent the world from moving forward. Catherine, I think if you use the question section, that will suffice. It looks like the chat functionality is being disabled. But if you can use the question and answer area, that would be great. And just respond with your response there. Thank you. What other reasons are there for choosing to attend and focus on the bottom of the pyramid at this stage? And if your interest is not the bottom of the pyramid and on emergent leadership, what makes you think that perhaps this might be a rich field for you to explore emergent leadership? And that would be a good transition into the next discussion. Okay. So based on that, thank you, Urmi, thank you, Catherine, for sharing. Looks like there's one more. Catherine, you've said that with your work with the ZERI network on developing blue economy, it focuses on the bottom of the pyramid, but that's all pro bono at this point. So it's not focusing from an economic perspective. It sounds like it's not engaged in terms of consulting services or the like. Okay. Well, based on that feedback, I think one of the images that I'll share with you is this one, which gives you essentially, it's similar to a heat map, but each of the areas that you see here has an assessed informal economy, for good or for ill, where the blue patches are the deepest, and I think that was originally meant to be a purple color, where there is the strongest informal economy, and the red is the next strongest, lightening all the way to yellow and then clear, in terms of assessment as well as actuality. So when you look at China and see that China is not demonstrably colored, well, it's not colored at all, that doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't have a strong informal economy. It just means that the assessment of the informal economy has not yielded enough data to be able to say whether or not it's bigger than a bread box, so to speak. We've got a couple more responses here. In terms of reason for focusing on the bottom of the pyramid, the top-down leadership approach has failed us dramatically. Barclays is currently an example of that, yes. And having worked in the field of corporate governance, Urmi realizes that bottom-up leadership is the best way to find leaders. And then Adina has shared that focusing on the bottom of the pyramid is for sustainability. It helps social performance. And Urmi's asked, what color is the legend? It really is a spectrum of red, and it's meant to be an equivalent of a heat map, where lighter colors are cooler, meaning they have less of an informal economy, and the darker colors have a stronger informal economy. But the blue that you see on screen actually should be the deepest, hottest color. I think it was a deep purple, and there's been a problem as it's come up on screen, so I apologize for that. But blue is where the strongest informal economies exist. And in many cases, that's a direct response to the failings of the formal economy. So let's switch gears. We're going to talk now about emergent leadership, and what we wanted to do was introduce some of the contexts in which emergent leaderships arise. And predominantly they're need-based. And we'll share some stories around each of these in just a moment, but I just wanted to cover off what the different kinds of needs were in terms of output, or in terms of leadership emergence. So the first is urgent need in terms of crises, disasters, and emergencies. This is a reflection of situational leadership, context-specific leadership in many cases. And we've got a great story that I heard a few years ago that I'd like to share with you. It's actually, it's nearly 20 years old, the story at this stage. The next area in which there would be emergent leadership is around presenting need, and that's a leader who steps in to fill a leadership void. They see an opportunity where there should be a leader, and a specific, or they feel a specific action should be taken, and absent that leadership, they step in either to fulfill a decision-making or a problem-solving responsibility, which may grow into a broader leadership role over time. Their initial leadership is focused on an immediate need, not necessarily a critical need, but a need that perhaps they feel a need to respond to in the moment. And the last is an evolving need, and this is where a person over time makes a series of choices, and those choices increase their responsibilities, and the nature of the role that they have in a given context changes over time. There are a number of variables involved in the evolution of the need, and as a result, the evolution of the emergent leadership over time. So where the emergent where the emergent leader in terms of an urgent need is almost instantaneous in terms of responding to the criticality, and the presenting need is something that happens not necessarily simultaneously, but it happens on a more swift scale. The evolving need is actually a progression over time. It could be months, it could be years. In terms of other leadership, an alternate in terms of leadership is the emergence of no formal leader. The idea that there would be a circumstance in which there's no direct leader identified, and it's a shared responsibility across the whole group variously. And one example of that might be the Occupy Wall Street movement, for example. So, based on this, there are a few stories that I just want to share to illustrate where these different types of emergent leadership can be presented. The first story it takes place in the early 1990s in the United States. I don't know if any of you were in the Midwest, but if you were in the Midwest, certainly around any of the major rivers or tributaries in the Midwest of the United States in 1993, then you would remember what is referred to as the Great Flood at that time. And for those of you who don't know, there was a very wet autumn in 1992. It completely soaked the ground. It was followed by a huge set of snowstorms in the winter of 1992 and 93. And subsequent to that, there were persistent spring weather over the same area, dropping more and more water. And effectively what happened was that by the middle of 1993, around June 1st, the soil across much of the Midwest was so soaked it could not take any more water. And essentially what you're looking at on screen are the confluence of the Mississippi, Missouri, and Illinois rivers immediately north of Illinois. And you can see on screen, certainly in the darker blue on the left hand of the screen, how flooded those rivers were. Anyway, the point of giving you that context is that in this particular situation, this catastrophe, cities and towns found themselves inundated what were being referred to then as 100-year floods, but in places such as St. Louis, the river levels rose nearly 20 feet above flood stage. Now, flood stage is, I think, pegged at about 56 feet. So 20 feet above 56 feet was where the floods went, and it was the highest ever recorded in 228 years. Now, I do not know the name of the person who arose as an emergent leader, but in one community, people were gathered close to the river, and they were distraught at the rising floodwaters, and there was no clear focus for action, and frustrations were high. And in the middle of this, a local teacher, who was not an office holder in the community nor a known community leader, stepped in to fill the leadership breach. And she began directing efforts to fill and place sandbags in strategic places alongside the river, and asked people to confirm that their family and friends were safe. So she kind of set these two goals for people and was monitoring those. One witness to the scene noted that the teacher may not have made all the right choices, but when she made the wrong choices, she quickly corrected and was resilient enough to continue. And others who were witness to her actions noted there were other formal leaders on the scene, emergency personnel in particular. However, when this woman took charge, this teacher took charge, they actually ceded some of their authority in part to hers, and she was effectively coordinating meaningful action, and as a result, people were paying attention to her. So this is an example of an urgent need requiring a leader, and this person stepping in to fill the breach. So that's one example of an emergent leader that's context specific. Another example is taken from Cambodia, and I can thank Naga for this story and the next. But this is the story of a young man in Cambodia by the name of Aki Ra. And Aki-Ra was given a gun at the age of 10, and he became a child soldier in the Khmer Rouge. And as a result of his initial investiture into this army of sorts, he was given the responsibility of planting landmines, and at one point was planted up to 5,000 landmines in a month. Now, many years down the line, according to the Cambodian Mine Action and Victim Assistance Authority, an estimated 4 to 6 million landmines were laid in Cambodia during 3 decades of conflict. Over time, Aki-Ra, who deeply regretted his part in laying those landmines, over time he decided that he wanted to do something about it. And today he now goes into rural villages to find the remaining mines and defuse them. When the United Nations came in the early 1990s to try to help restore peace in Cambodia, this man, Aki-Ra, saw an opportunity to begin undoing the damage that he and others had done. So he started his training with the UN and began helping them clear mines. And over time, he created an organization that would end up donating all of, or devote all of their donated funds to clearing Cambodia's rural, low priority minefields. So in a nation that has between 4 and 6 million mines planted, much of the effort was focused on removing mines that were in the most heavily populated areas, closer to cities and towns, etc. And the villages, which had also a huge number of mines, were left largely unattended. So Aki-Ra chose to focus his efforts there. So these villages, populated primarily by poor farmers, didn't always receive first dibs for minefield clearance projects because of their remoteness and limited traffic, and sometimes they were completely overlooked. And due to the work of Aki-Ra and his organization, they've been able to continue clearing mines in these remote areas. On top of that, as a result of the deaths and injuries as a result of the mines still being out in the field, so to speak, Aki-Ra and his then wife created an orphanage about a decade ago. And in that time, they've taken in about 100 orphans, some of whom had been injured by landmines. So this particular story reflects, an emergent leader who evolves over time, recognizing that there is a need, recognizing his own connection to that need, and seeing how present it was, decided that he would apply his direct resources to meet that need and dedicate himself to fulfilling that particular purpose. So in this case, we have an emergent leader who has grown out of a presenting need that he recognized earlier on than others. The last story I'll share with you is from Kenya, and it regards a young man by the name of Evans Wodongo, who you can see on screen. And Evans was the youngest of 4 children, and he grew up in a home that stressed the importance of education because his father was a high school teacher. But one of the problems with being in a remote community and living and trying to study in that community is that the cooking fires in the huts that these people were living in produced so much soot, it was impacting the ability of the children and the people in the huts to be able to read effectively. So after years of exposure to smoke while studying by a kerosene firelight, it had left this young man, Wodongo, with eyesight problems. And with a lack of a good light to study by, he often had to share one lantern with his siblings and other family members. He recalled that he often had unfinished homework and poor exam performance. And it wasn't until 2004, while he was attending a university in Kenya for agriculture and technology, that Wodongo found a solution to this niggling issue. He was fiddling with the dorm experiment involving the timing of an LED, a light-emitting diode Christmas light, when it struck him that this could be an environmentally friendly light source that could be used to light rural homes. And this chance discovery was combined with another chance discovery as he was walking home from school one day, and he found an abandoned solar panel, and that gave rise to a project called Use Solar, Save Lives. So this young man, this 23-year-old, what started out as a personal need and what he saw as a need in his community over time, he created a project to create a solar-powered LED lantern to help light rural homes at the great age of 23. And with the help of an external non-profit, he's estimated he's distributed over 10,000 lanterns, and these have been distributed for free. And his additional response to that is, based on his efforts and the efforts of the people he's been working with, villagers can now buy food with the money that they save on kerosene and firewood. So this is a leader who didn't necessarily step into a critical situation and wasn't aware of a presenting need in the broader community, but over time he grew into becoming a leader in not just his community, but I would guess at a national level for his thinking about how he could impact the people of his country. So one of the questions that comes up for me as I reflect on these stories is that as we look at bringing together practitioners and scholars to address the issue of emergent leadership, I'm hoping that we're aware of the different ways in which leaders can emerge and what kinds of opportunities there might be for us to explore from a research perspective, how we can foster and sustain the emergence of leadership in this particular area. So here's the last of the polls that we'll put out there, and this poll is regarding your work on emergent leadership. So this is for everybody who's been able to join us. I'll open up another poll, and the poll is, how much of your work is focused on emergent leadership? The poll is open. If you could take a moment and complete the poll, that would be great. So that's quite interesting. It's similar to, in some respects, the earlier results, but I'll share them with you now. As you can see, over half of the participants on the webinar today, their work on emergent leadership is actually less than 20% of their research or scholarship focus. However, we have, I believe, one person or two people, I guess, given the numbers, who actually it's nearly 100% of their work. So it's interesting that we have at different ends of the spectrum. In design thinking circles, we call them extreme users. I guess in this particular case, we've got extreme scholars. We've got scholars at one end of the distribution curve and a smaller group of scholars at the other end of the distribution curve. So I guess my question to you is, for those people who are not focused on emergent leadership, what's your interest in this topic as we go into the session today, the session in the coming weeks at the NLS conference? So if you can use the question box and respond to that question, that would be great. So what are some of your reasons for wanting to explore emergent leadership if you are not exploring it already? And if you are exploring emergent leadership, what else are you hoping to experience as a result of the work at the NLS conference in Boston? And while you're perhaps coming to your thoughts, I just want to circle back. And Joe Raylan, forgive me if I'm pronouncing your last name incorrectly, Joe, but Joe has shared from his work that he'd received eyewitness reports regarding the Great Flood of 1993, that many communities responded to the Great Floods in a completely self-organized fashion, which is another type of emergent leadership with no formal roles or positions. People sorted themselves naturally into roles without any discernible identification of a single leader, which I'm not surprised by that. I having experienced the emergence of group leadership previously, I think that's it's a remarkable thing to see in practice. Thank you for sharing that, Joe. Catherine has said that in terms of emergent leadership, she's looking at strategies for encouraging and equipping people to step forward in leadership roles. Great. And Nora is exploring looking to interact with others interested in this area and to explore different aspects of emergent leadership. Most of Nora's work focuses on the group and the team level. Great. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. So we're almost out of time here, and I want to say thank you once again for taking the time to spend an hour of your day with us. If you have any additional questions, we've got a couple more minutes if you want to use the question feature to share those. But that's it as far as the slides are concerned. And to the earlier question, I believe it was yours, Catherine, if you're looking for the slides, I'll be making those available shortly, and we'll get those out to you via email. Probably this evening, if not tomorrow morning at the latest. But if there are questions, please feel free to ask them, and we'll do our best to answer them. And if you need to dive off the webinar, thank you so much for your time today. Catherine has asked, based on the last NLS conference, what can we expect to happen during and after this one? So this conference is going to be much more dynamic in terms of engagement between scholars and practitioners, Catherine. That's thanks for that question, by the way. And the evening, the evening before will be an opportunity for a broad-based panel discussion which Mary Ulbeen is going to moderate, which will engage the practitioners in reflecting on their work at the bottom of the pyramid and their work with leadership at the bottom of the pyramid, emergent and other leadership. And it'll be an opportunity for the scholars to engage with the panelists initially. And this is the beginning of the design thinking for scholars approach, where we're exploring the challenge itself, so exploring that initial design challenge I shared with you, which you'll see in the slides when you receive them. And you'll also be able to engage with each other regarding the discovery process. So it's going to be quite dynamic. It will be facilitated in the room. There'll be dinner, there'll be work and networking over dinner as well that first evening, and maybe a small homework assignment. Small, I say small. The next day we'll dig into the exploration of the data that we have, the available data. We'll dig into it. We'll seek to gain a deeper understanding from which we can create some insights based on the data, which will help us frame some opportunities that we can pursue from an ideation perspective. And the ideation piece is where we'll actually reflect on what are the research opportunities that we can identify, and we'll explore those. The percentage of practitioners versus scholars, it's not 50-50. We have, I think, 8 to 9 practitioners in the room, and then I think we have, Naga, if you know how many scholars we have, if you could just ping me and let me know, that would be great. The question is how many people are registered for the conference overall. That's the question on the table at the moment.
We expect about 35 in attendance, 35 to 37.
Okay.
Of whom 9 practitioners and 28 scholars, of whom many of them have deep connections in the world of practice.
Excellent.
I also wanted to highlight, if I may.
Yes, absolutely.
That the session that Drew described on the first day is headlined by Joe, who's with us today, Joe Raylan, and Sonia Spina. These two have committed much of their academic careers to bringing us a deeper understanding of, in the case of Joe, the notion of leaderful organizations or institutions, and in the case of Sonia, leadership in the nonprofit institutions. We also are there joined by 5 practitioners one from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Karen Lyon, one from Ashoka, the leading social enterprise organization, Stuart Yager, two from Riders for Health, Mr. and Mrs. Coleman, and I'm forgetting fifth person. Oh, fifth is a quasi-academic, Marty Chen, who founded and leads an organization called Women Employment and Informal Sector. I think it's VIGO. It's a Boston-based organization. So we have a very good blend of people really interested in the issue of poverty alleviation and leadership, and they bring to the forum very different perspectives. I personally am excited to hear them share their thoughts and then sort of interact with them to get a better understanding of how this works.
Thanks, Naga. So it looks like we have a great lineup in terms of practitioners and scholars both for the event, and it's going to be an intimate event. So we'll have it's likely we'll have under 40 people gathered, which I think will enable some diverse and rich and deep dialogue among participants. So that will be a great way to spend some time together and exploring this this rich and fertile area. We are out of time, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time today. I do appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you in Boston, those of you who can make it, and we'll look forward to making a personal connection, a face-to-face connection when we get there. If you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to respond to my emails. I'm more than happy to find answers for you. As I've said last time, if I can't answer you, I will find somebody who has the details that you need. Thanks so much, and see you in Boston in a few weeks.